Hello and welcome to the Content Advantage, a talk show about content for content professionals. My name is Scott Abel, and with me today is my co-host Megan Gahuli. Hi, Megan.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Awesome. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, this will be fun. So, Scott, we're professional communicators, as are a lot of the folks that are watching right now. And we often talk about how much we value our customers and how important it is to create an amazing content experience. But we also know that despite our best intentions, sometimes the decisions we make don't serve everybody equally. So that's
right.
why we've invited today an organizational accessibility specialist, Nadav Levy, who is here to talk to us about the importance of making an effort to ensure all of our digital products are really accessible to everyone. So welcome to the Content Advantage, Nadav.
Thank you very
Welcome,
much.
Nadav.
Thank you for inviting me. Very excited to be here to talk about this.
Very nice, very nice. So just to sort of start things off, Nadav, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to the subject of today's show?
Yeah, sure, Megan. So, I've been in technology for over 20 years, mainly focused on business development for different products. And so I worked in large corporations and in many startups. I have one startup of my own I will explain in a second. Different industries and position, but always focusing on the products and the data. And I think that over the years I learned that no matter what I do, I must always focus on the customer real needs. I know it sounds obvious, but it's not that simple to do. And part of this means providing an incredible experience that includes amazing content. It doesn't matter if it's a blog or video or a support document or any other content that you create, the focus should always be the customer, the end user. And I always try to think about what he's going to see, how he's going to see the content, and prepare it accordingly. And today I have a company, a startup called Machuno, which I founded about 2 years ago. And Machuno helps companies identify accessibility gaps, accessibility challenges, according to the local legislation, according to the market, and help them with the services and solutions to close those gaps as quickly as possible. And since I'm focusing specifically on accessibility for about 2 years now, I learned a lot about people real needs. And I learned that we must all make this effort to make our content accessible, the products accessible. Otherwise, we'll have a lot of problems for them and for us.
Nice.
Excellent. Thanks for telling us a little bit about that, Nadav. So for the audience members who've just joined us, let me tell you a few things about today's show. First of all, today's show is being recorded. So if you need to jump off the show early, don't worry about it. We'll have a recording available to you. You can access it using the same URL that you're using to watch today's live show. So just copy that URL and place it somewhere else. Don't worry, we'll also send you an email reminder after the show ends. That will include a link as well. We hope that you'll share that link with other people who might be interested in the topic of accessibility as well. And don't worry about your camera or your microphone. We can't see or hear you. It's not that kind of show. You can ask a question at any time. All you have to do is look underneath your webinar viewing panel for the Ask a Questions tab. Click that. It'll open a little text-based window. You can text a question into Megan and I. We'll try to ask Nadav as many as possible with the time that we have available on today's show. There's also some additional content in the attachments section of your webinar viewing panel. Click that button. We'll open a little document repository where you can download content provided by today's sponsor as well as by the presenter today. We've provided a few links to the content that we're going to talk about today. So in case you see a video or a statistic or we talk about a particular topic, there's probably some information in the attachments library that could help you learn more about that topic. At the end of the show, I'll remind you to give us a 1 through 5 star rating. And other than that, we're ready to take and dive right into this topic. Megan, why don't you take off with the first question?
Yes, absolutely. So Nadav, can you help us understand why is it important for content professionals to really think about accessibility, understand accessibility issues, and then address those issues?
Sure, Megan. I want to start with a short video that get us all aligned about what accessibility means, what is the problem with accessibility. So I'll just play the video, 1 second.
Yes, I can, suddenly, yes, I can. Gee, I'm afraid to go on has turned into, yes, I can. Take a look, what do you see? 133 pounds of confidence me. Got the feeling I can do anything, yes, I can. Something that sings in my blood is telling me, yes, I can. I was just born today, I can go all the way, yes, I can. 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 Hey, yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can! Are you ready? I can climb Everest. Yes, I can. I can fight here all night and never rest. Yes, I can. I was just born today. I can go all the way. Yes, I can.
Wow.
That's awesome. That was
amazing.
fun.
Yeah,
Very
I
cool.
love this. Yeah, thanks. I love this video. It's very inspiring. And like you mentioned, it's available in the attachments if anyone want to use it. I found out some people find it a bit shocking, but I find it inspiring. And it briefly shows us that there are different types of disabilities. And basically, it's our job to make the world accessible. It's not the problem of the people with disabilities, it's our problem. We need to make businesses, parks, websites, and obviously content accessible for them, for everyone. So the decisions we make about how we produce or present or deliver the content can have a negative or positive impact on those who experience disabilities. I think you should know that 1 out of 4 adults lives today living with disabilities. So we can't ignore a quarter of the world population. We just have to make something.
Wow, it's very impactful to watch that video. I also wonder if we certainly care about the end user that we're trying to communicate with when we create information, but can you tell us, what do we know about the impact of not providing accessible content on businesses? What do we know about that?
Well, like I mentioned, 1 out of 4 adults lives with a disability. That's 1.3 billion people globally that struggle to access your content every day. If it doesn't properly structured or developed, he won't be able to see it or hear it. We'll see an example later. So if you build a website, write a PDF document, we have all the tools today to help them, help you plan the document, the data, produce it, test it. You can test it for different types of accessibility very easily, and I will talk about this later. Sadly, today in 2021, 98% of website homepages are not accessible.
Wow.
Sounds not real, but that's the statistics. And if you will make, statistics shows that if we will make the content accessible, it requires more work, but it's worth it because businesses that are not accessible, one, they are taking a risk of getting fines and lawsuits, which is more and more common today. And more important for me is that they are missing huge potential to grow their business by 20%. That's the numbers we're talking about. People with disabilities and their families have the buying power of about $8 trillion globally, and the numbers will continue to grow as the world population ages. Basically, you don't want to miss this.
That makes a lot of sense. I think it also is important to point out that there's all kinds of disability, right? There's not just there's temporary disability. Sometimes you might not consider yourself disabled or lesser capable than somebody else until something happens to you, until an accident or something unplanned happens to you. Now you're temporarily disabled. And you're right, if we don't invest in providing alternative ways for content to be consumed by people who have disabilities, whether they're temporary or long-term, we totally miss out on reaching them. And it's got to impact their families and the caregivers too, right? Because if they don't have a great brand experience with your company, why would they recommend it to their friends, or why would their friends say anything good about your brand?
Exactly.
So you had mentioned a number, and I think it was 98% of websites are not accessible today. Is that right?
Wow. Yeah, that's the number.
That's a huge number. So 98% of us have websites that are not accessible. How do we learn where the gaps are in terms of accessibility in the digital experiences that we're working so hard to create for our prospects and customers?
Yeah, actually, happily for those who are involved in digital, it's much easier to make things accessible. If we only focus on the digital world, we have a lot of tools that help us test the structure of the data. Either if we develop a software or website or write documents, the tools can point to different problems in your data. For example, if you have contrast issues or font size issues or navigation problem or structure, the way you structure your data, the tools will easily tell you what you need to fix and which type of disability it can affect, and you can fix it pretty easily. So some tools like can only point to the problems that you have, and you will have to manually fix it. Some take it to the next steps and automatically fix it for you, especially in websites. But before I go into tools, I think that we need to remember the basic things when we write content. Just keep the right structuring of heading and subheading and the right in paragraphs, and add alternate text to images, use lists, identify, you can in Word even identify the document language. So all of those small things easily make everything more accessible. So content will be better not just for people with disability, it will be better for everyone. And actually, it will be easier for Google and other search engines to rate your score much higher, your SEO score. So even if you write, like I said, if you write a Word document, it actually has a built-in accessibility checker in Word. It will review your document and tell you what you have to fix. And if you export it to PDF, it will keep those accessibility preferences available on PDF as well.
Excellent. It seems like closing those gaps can be challenging for some companies, but you're right. The efforts that we make to provide better accessibility also provide better understandability, I think, for search engines, since they can understand and interpret what the content is on our page. So I think that's a really important thing for people to think about. When you increase accessibility, you're also increasing findability, and that's the biggest problem, is getting people to find your content. But Megan, it seems like this might be a good time to tell the audience a little bit about Zoom In Software and why you sponsor the show and what it does to help content development teams create meaningful content experiences.
Absolutely. So most companies make it really difficult for customers to answer the questions they need or get the answers that they need through documentation. So our platform ingests technical product content from any source, whether it's structured or unstructured, no matter where it was created or where it's managed. And we deliver it into a documentation portal, into your community, into your customer service site, and even inside the product itself. And in this way, we enable your customers to self-serve more efficiently and also empower your organization to reduce support costs and improve product adoption. And so, of course, accessibility is one of those things that we're constantly thinking about and constantly trying to make better.
And it's a great thing to do. It seems like, in addition to being the right thing to do, our digital content should be accessible and open up new opportunities for us, right? There's new markets. So, Nadav, can investing in accessibility help us attract new customers? Do you have any evidence of that?
We have a lot of evidence. So I can give you one example of a project that I've done with
Sure.
a very large pharma company, about 50,000 employees. This one was actually an internal project to develop a knowledge portal for all of those employees. And the first step was to, again, understand the needs of the end user, the employees. And after we got this, we decided on the platform to run everything. But basically, the next big task was all about content. The goal was to improve each document that they had in the different service centers, and to make it suitable for self-service. And we wanted to reduce the time it takes to find solution for internal services and reduce the overload on the service centers. So again, we just focus on the structure of each document, and like I described earlier, and it basically makes things easier for everyone. We didn't focus or think about accessibility. We just thought about the focus on making the content right. As a human being, it was much easier to find solution and read documents on a structure that we know. We always see the same structure. And for the platform and search engines, like we mentioned, Google, it was just easier. It's very quickly. They presented only the relevant data, and most issues were resolved quickly, very quickly. So basically, the results of this project, it's a huge project, but after only 1 year, we saw that the reduction of calls to the service desk of about 30%.
Wow.
And this is, we're talking about thousands of calls each month.
Sure.
That's
and
amazing.
You're talking about call deflection, right? Not the opportunity for a customer to self-serve and to try to find an answer on their own instead of struggling and then having to call into support to ask for help.
Yeah, they found the answers on their own, and they found it very quickly because they didn't have to wait on the line. And
Wow.
Most answers were very short and quick. You can immediately understand how much this time and cost it saves to the company.
Yeah.
And, the effect on the employee satisfaction was amazing.
That's really interesting. So we've talked a lot about accessibility, and I think you're right that when content is more accessible, it's also easier to do content reuse, and it's also more translatable, and there are lots of other benefits to having accessible content, right? But I think some of us have kind of we look and we say, yes, totally want accessible content, but I'm not entirely sure what that means. So can you just sort of show us one particular use case, which I think is hard for us to sort of imagine until we see it. So I'm thinking specifically of a journey that a blind user might go through in order to access content.
Yeah, sure. I can show you a short video, really a few seconds, that show you how the experience that the user that has visually impaired or blind, what he's experiencing when he's trying to access a non-accessible website. So just a second, I will share this video.
Please, that's very interesting.
Here's what people with low vision get from an inaccessible web page.
A blurred website simulating low vision.
Link image, red dot with a white letter C that symbolizes a moon crescent as well as the sun. This logo is followed by a black banner that says City Lights, which is the name of this online portal. Link image, nav_home.gif. Link image, nav_news.gif. Link image, nav_facts.gif. Link image, nav_survey.gif.
A user who is totally blind gets this experience.
A black screen.
Which is your favorite city park? Radio button, 1 of 6. Radio button, 2 of 6. Radio button, 3 of 6.
Could you fill out the survey?
Wow, that
Yeah.
is that is very impactful. I think that's what happens when we skip the alt text step, right? Or we don't put descriptive alt text in to help people. We put it in just so we can fill out the field and then move
Right.
on to the next thing. It seems like that was what that content was doing.
Yeah, this is and actually it's very simple to fix it. Very simple, and just a bit more effort, and it was very easier for everyone. It's this
Well,
is just one.
if it's simple to fix, can you provide any content tips? How can content creators deploy content and do something that changes the way they work daily to make that content more accessible to everybody? What are some things they can do?
I think I mentioned this earlier. We have a lot of tools that can help you make the content more accessible. Always, again, think about who is the target audience. From there, you can understand the tools that you have to use. So if you are using, if you're building a website, you can easily deploy different types of tools. If you can deploy automatic toolbars that basically they work with any open source platform, or you just add a few lines of code to your, developers can do it, and you immediately will receive an toolbar on your right side, left side, whatever, that helps people with different disabilities access your website. It could be a screen reader. It could change the colors of the website. It could skip the non-relevant link. It could do a lot of things. So that's the easiest way to make a website accessible. The same works for programs. If you develop a software, you have the same tools that I'm saying. Other options are to install analysis tools, and you will get alerts on different problems. You can easily, you can fix them manually. And the latest technology we have today is AI and automation to actually fix your website automatically. That all sounds great, and it's actually great, but all of those tools only solves about, let's say, 30 to 50% of the problems. And eventually, if we want to make perfect results, we will have to manually develop the website and make the coding manually. It's not this is something you can do in more advanced steps if you have the time, the budget, you're ready to make the effort. If you decide to go for full development, I would personally recommend working with companies that specialize in accessibility coding, and they actually have people with disabilities as part of their testing team, so they can test that it works online and for any other kind of disability before they deliver the product.
Okay.
I think that's huge. The idea of QAing using folks that require accessible content, such a big opportunity for any of us who are creating websites.
Yeah, it seems like it also. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I agree with Megan. It's totally, it's very simple, and it's finally companies are starting to understand that this is a must. And we will see more and more development companies that hire people with disabilities for that.
I wonder if the movement for kind of inclusion that seems to be taking hold around the world right now is going to help drive more adoption of accessible content. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, there is a new movement. There are a few movements, but one of the more interesting ones from my point of view is called the Valuable 500. It's a great initiative. I can send you the link later, guys. Basically, it's an amazing initiative since it includes a community of the top global CEOs that finally understand that we can't ignore 1.3 billion people with disabilities. We just can't. And they also understand that if they will solve those gaps, they won't only help their business grow, like we mentioned before. They will help their employees have better environment, more inclusive environment. So, things are getting they're starting to understand that it's important. And I'm pretty sure that this movement, it's a new movement, but if it grows, it will affect all the smaller companies. And help us, become more accessible, more inclusive world. Again, that's
Excellent. For the audience members, you might notice there's a little announcement displayed on your screen right now. That's a link to the website that discusses the topic that Nadav was just telling you about, called the Valuable 500, which is basically CEOs of global companies recognizing that disability inclusion is something they need to be paying attention to, and they're actually using their leadership as an opportunity to encourage other people. And they're big companies like Shell and Microsoft and MasterCard who are playing in this role. Maybe your company, if you're watching today, you may also be involved in some leadership way. And as it starts to trickle down, you'll probably hear more about it. So check out that link and learn some stuff that they provided for you there.
Scott, I wanted to ask a question that's actually from the audience because it's really relevant to what we're talking about right now. Somebody asked, they're commenting about automated testing tools can only provide 30 to 50% of the required fixes for accessible content.
Right.
So they ask, what manual testing strategies do you suggest that companies use to fully test their electronic documentation and other content?
Manually. Again, if you're going to manually test this, the best way is to hire people with disabilities or hire a service for testing and let them go over your content. And there's no better way than this.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So in essence, bring on folks that use accessible content and have them test your content. That makes a lot of sense. I have another question, and that is, you mentioned colors, and colors is such an interesting topic because, as we know, in different countries, different colors mean different things. So you have to be very cautious with colors anyway. So there's not only the, can people see the color, but there's also, what does that color mean in a specific country? So how do you sort of think through balancing using the best colors versus thinking about the meaning that specific colors have in specific locations?
That's a great question. Actually, I don't think I know enough about the subject. I mean, I'm not a designer. And when I talked about colors and contrast, it was more in, for accessibility purposes. So if you use, yellow background and white text, people with who are visually impaired won't be able to see your text. So I'm not, I don't want to answer your question about the meaning of the color. Sorry.
That's all right. I was going to say, I know that the Localization World Conference is a conference that some of the people in our industry participate in who are responsible for translating and localizing the content for people. It will be interesting, Megan, though, to see how localization overlays with accessibility and how you make smart decisions that don't exclude people, but then also communicate the same meaning. I think what you were getting at is that those colors might have another meaning other than what you anticipated. So if you stack on a disability and you're having a localization problem, the content creation process becomes a little more complicated. But if you get it right, you should be able to scale it and deliver the right experience to each person, even if they're in a different country and the color rules are different than your country.
Right. Yeah, I wonder if it actually speaks to sort of the complexity of all of these things. People oftentimes will say, oh, it's just content, I can do that. But when you think about accessibility and you add in translation and you add in localization and you add in all of these factors, it becomes a very complex thing. So I don't know if there is a right or wrong. I think it's more of a, as Nadav was saying, put it out there and then QA it, right? Bring in accessibility, folks who require accessible content and have them find holes. Bring in other folks from other countries and have them let you know if you're using colors that aren't going to work. So it's a really complex situation.
Yeah, and there's a question from the audience about disability that's interesting too, that Nadav kind of touched on for just a second. And they were asking about situational disability. So I did a little Googling just to take a little pressure off you, Nadav, and say that there's a definition online where they talk about what that means. And they're saying that situational disabilities are annoying times, for example, when a room is suddenly too loud for you to hear a phone call, or when your eyes have been dilated at the eye doctor and you can't see for just a few hours. And while none of these things are long-term, right, they make digital accommodation necessary. So I think if we think about it that way, Megan, it's not just are we making content available for disabled people, but are we making our content available along the customer journey? If your journey to the doctor's office involves going to the website to make an appointment, that's one thing. But when you get to the doctor's office, if they give you an iPad with content on it, they just dilated your eyes, they need to accommodate you. They know that they just did that to you, and they know it's temporary, and they need you to fill out that content now. So I think there's something about the immediacy of the situation, the customer journey, that plays a role here.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you go to the dentist and you have your mouth full of stuff and they ask you a question.
You're
like, I can't answer you right now. So doing that with the iPad, having dilated your eyes, is very similar to that. That's true.
Yeah, I did complain, by the way, at the eye doctor the last time. I think Nadav will giggle at this one. And I was waiting in the room, and of course my eyeglasses had been broken, which is why I went to the doctor to get a replacement. And they handed me an iPad. But before they did that, they gave me a piece of paper, right? And they said, fill out this form and give it back to the receptionist, and then you can see the doctor. Well, I couldn't see the form. So I was a little agitated by that. I said, I'm at the doctor's office for my eyes. This is what you specialize in. How do you know that I can't see this? So I tell the doctor, I get to the doctor's appointment, and the doctor says, oh, I heard you had a challenge in the lobby when you were waiting for me. What was it? And I told him, and he goes, oh, you're totally right about that. That's why I hired a web developer. Let me show you something. And he whips out an iPad, and he shows me his new website has a button that allows you to enlarge the font. But see, he's not a content professional. He doesn't know that that's easy to do. He didn't even know it was a thing until somebody pointed it out to him. And then he asked his web developer, hey, I'm an eye doctor, make the font bigger. But some people need it smaller. And I thought, this is an example of the aha moment that a small business person has. Do you have other examples?
That's a great example, and that's exactly what we said earlier. That before you do anything, think about your audience. If you're an eye doctor, think about who is your audience, who is going to fill out this form. And this button that increase or decrease the font size, very simple. By the way, it's available on all of those toolbars that I mentioned, which are free. So we didn't have to hire any developer, but that's a very simple example. Just think about who is going to use your data, your content, your platform.
Perfect. Are there any other questions from the audience? Let's see. Nope, I think we've got them all there. So that's really good. Let's move on to the closing of the show then, Megan. I wanted to see if you had any follow-up questions for Nadav that jumped into your mind before we let him go.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we've been talking about here is QA, and I just want to kind of dive into that a little bit more, because I really do think that's so important. So do you have any ideas where I'm thinking about it from a standpoint of a developer, a content producer who produces something and doesn't really know if it meets accessibility needs. Now we could have the tools that you mentioned, but is there a resource out there that we can go to say, I need a group of folks who require accessible content to just hack away at this? Do you know of a resource out there that does that?
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't have anyone, just top of my head, but I saw a few of them. There are services that you can hire people with disabilities to test your content. And I can share the link later if you want. I will find it.
Okay, perfect. But there are services out there that do that?
Yep.
Yeah, very nice. It's very similar to, like, if you're getting something translated, there are editing services that will edit Japanese for the location as well as the language, right? But in this case, you just need people that will edit it specifically. But I think, again, we want folks that actually require these different aspects, not just somebody who thinks they know everything about accessibility, right? So
yeah, exactly. And they will have they know exactly what to test, and they also have their own tools. If they need a screen reader, they have a screen reader. You don't have to worry about it. So it's a great service.
I really like this idea of this, if nothing else that we got from the show today, of this using humans to QA. your content to learn lessons about what kinds of roadblocks you're probably accidentally introducing. I don't think any
Right.
content people are sitting around thinking, what can we do to make this content more difficult for people? But if
Right.
you can actually pinpoint with a real human being and let them show you what's wrong, you can learn lessons from that you could apply all across your entire company. So it seems like a great
Right.
piece of advice.
Yeah, we actually did that. I flew to visit a customer, and he's blind, and he went through it with me. He said, "Look, this is how I use the site." And I watched as he did it, and I went, "Oh my gosh." I wouldn't even have thought half of that stuff. So it was really, really enlightening. And the same thing happens with other needs, right? So I think that is really kind of the key here is just make sure you have human beings that are able to tell you where your gaps are. That's such a important thing.
I agree.
Excellent. Well, Nadav, thank you for joining us and helping us understand kind of the landscape around accessibility today. I bet it's fast changing as well, and every day will be a new day, and tomorrow there might be products that do even more amazing detective work, trying to help us figure out what's wrong with our content. And I hope that you'll keep us surprised if you learn of anything new and exciting in the technology space that can help us do better. Let us know. We'd love to follow up with you and maybe showcase some of those things later in the future. So thank you for joining us today for our show. We really appreciate you making time for us. And thanks to the audience for being here as well. Megan and I both love doing this show, first of all, and like your ideas. So if you've got any ideas for upcoming shows, please let us know. You can leave it in the feedback bar, which you'll be asked to give us some feedback here in a few seconds. You can actually type in your ideas there, or you can send us an email to Scott@theContentWrangler, and we'll be happy to try to see if we can get your guest or your topic on a future show.
Great. And before we sign off, we'd love to get your feedback, your thoughts on today's show. We really want to know what you thought of it. So use the Rate This tab located in your viewing panel. Give us a 1 to 5 star rating, and definitely leave comments. We read every single one of them. So definitely leave those comments. We'd love to hear what you thought.
And this is a content nerd's dream come true. Our next show will be Tuesday, May the 25th. And if you're interested in structured content and intelligent content, you're going to not want to miss this show. We're going to have a chat with Mike Ian Tosca, who is a super informed expert on the subject. He's going to talk to us about the need for enterprise content strategy that supports content delivery. And so, we really value trying to deliver the right piece of content to the right person at the right time in the right format and language. Mike is the king at talking about this. So if you're concerned about that, you definitely want to dial in on May the 25th. Look in your inbox for an invitation from the Content Wrangler to the Content Advantage show. And Megan and I will be there chatting with Mike, and you can bring your questions as well. Until we see you again, we hope that you're safe and that you'll be well and you'll keep doing great work. Thanks, Nadav, for joining us today. And thanks to the audience. See you again soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ensure your customers find the answers they need with Zoomin. Bring together product content from all teams and sources to deliver a unified, personalized content experience. Check us out at www.zoominsoftware.com.